Hey everyone, this is Bruno, and I wanted to answer the question, what am I going to do if Heal to Death fails? And the answer is just start making the next game. So, I have an incredible amount of self-belief that I will eventually become a successful game developer. And by successful game developer, I mean I will eventually be able to make enough revenue to cover my life, my cost of living. I want to be able to do this full time, and I do believe that eventually I'll be able to reach that point. But will I be able to hit this with Heal to Death? Not looking like it. And I don't really mind because I genuinely feel lucky and fortunate to be able to make games in general. Because, like, the last AAA game studio in my city was well over a decade, and the jobs haven't really come back. There's like a couple small indies trying, but it's not looking great, the scene in my city, and game dev in Australia is pretty rough in general. So the fact that I actually have a chance of making a product that I would buy myself, that's really awesome. And I'm always going to be grateful for the fact that I actually get to make games that I would want to play as a hobby in my spare time. That's awesome. Now, I do want to eventually make this full time because that would make my life even better. And I live to have a good life. I don't live for game dev. I live to have a good life. And part of having a good life is being able to do game dev. But I've got other things on Maslow's hierarchy of needs that I don't want to threaten. I don't want my stability, my financial stability to go down the toilet. That would make my life objectively worse. Like, even if my job is more fun, the idea that I'm like now having to worry about money, that's gonna make my life way worse. So I'm gonna be focusing on, once again, thinking about this in a really long term. Yeah, just thinking about this really long term. Because life is not one big grand event. It's not like, I don't know, you got some people who think getting married is going to be their best day of their life. It's like, nah, it's like a celebration, but it should be more of the same. And for some people, it's just like, well, I've had my one big event and now everything's downhill from here. It's just like, that is a really bad way to think about it. So I am of the opinion that, like, succeeding, being able to reach game dev as a full-time job, that is not the destination. That is a milestone in the destination. The destination is always going to be to have a life that you don't regret anything in, and that you are really kind of happy about your accomplishments as you go through. Whether you achieve amazing things or whether you just consistently tried your best and the world didn't really respect your efforts. That does happen. It's still worth just saying, like, you're going to be happier having tried than having just rotted doing nothing and end up being regretful. So I'm just going to be making the next game. Now, the next game I'm going to be making is, I am thinking about it as an RTS that is purely designed around a controller. So you've got other RTS games where they try to take the keyboard and mouse functionality and turn it into a controller, and it's pretty rough. I want to design the game like purely around a controller, so I don't want to have like these drag and select groups that you would kind of like use one of the buttons to hold down the mouse and then like, I don't want there to be a mouse on the RTS screen. I want to try and design it around like an organic controller where you have like one commander, and that commander sort of controls and does everything around the base. You build up monsters and stuff, and I don't really know what the game's going to look like yet, but this is a problem that I want to solve. And I sort of think that my pathway, my avenue to success, it's not gonna be two cakes where it's like I make another streamer bait game where there's always going to be some organic interest in that type of game. Or I'm not going to make a horror game where there's always going to be a, an appetite for horror games. I want to succeed by basically trying to solve a problem that me and other gamers have with a particular genre that like I'm familiar and that I like. I want to try and find a problem that me and other people have and try to solve it with a unique game that kind of doesn't exist. I think that my biggest strength as a developer, it's certainly not art. Uh, and I wouldn't even say it's programming. I'm a decent to good programmer. I get stuff done. I know when something needs systematic design and when you can just do the worst code just to get it done. I'm pretty good at knowing when to do that. I'm good at project management, but I would say that the thing that really sets me apart is the willingness to get playtester feedback. You hear a lot about how game developers just say like, oh, gamers, they don't give good solutions. I don't think that's the case. I have found that like well over 50% of people who leave feedback make at least one really good point that aligns with making the game better. Like, yes, the game has an identity and you have to work with the game's identity. Some gamers just straight up don't understand, and their main criticism is that this game is not what I wanted it to be. And it's like, okay, I can't use that feedback because you want the game to be something completely different. Fair enough. All right. But a lot of gamers make very valid points on how they think the game can be improved. And with Healed to Death, it was like 2.5 months, and I rushed out a quick demo for the first build. It was super rough. There was no tutorial, and I gave you 10 different healing spells to begin with. That, I was like, playtest and criticize. And I got so much good feedback early on. Even though like that early demo barely represented what the build was, I was able to get a huge amount of feedback. I was able to separate the feedback that matched what the game was trying to be and what the game was never going to be. And I just found like, yeah, no, gamers give good feedback. I really haven't experienced gamers giving good feedback. And I guess it's just like, I can empathize very well with their position. And that's kind of what sets me apart. And that's why I think that the avenue of trying to fix a problem that genres have is my avenue to success in game dev. So, in short, you know, whether I make a lot of money or not with Healed to Death, and it's not decided. I'm definitely not banking on it being a massive success, but I've got a lot of pathways forwards. I've got a lot of momentum, I would say, and enthusiasm towards making the next game. And everything I've done in Healed to Death, all the benefits can very easily be transferred over to the next game. So I'm really excited for what's next. I'm going to be releasing Healed to Death at like 8 a.m. on the 8th of April. That's my time. I think it just went into daylight savings, so that's Australian Eastern Daylight Savings time. So it'll probably be the 7th for Americans. And I'm going to be releasing it and selling it for $15 with a 10% discount for like a week. And then, yeah, we'll see how it goes. If it gets like a decent amount of plays, I'll probably do a patch 1.1 to fix some of the feedback items I get, just to make the game as good as possible. I think it's pretty good to do a patch 1.1. But, you know, after that, probably full steam ahead on the next game. Unless it's really successful, then I'll look at expanding it to, like, trying to convert the mouse and keyboard setup into a something that can be played with a controller. That's gonna be a big challenge. But I saw a streamer called Annie Fuchsia, I forget her name, but she had a setup where she was kind of like, as a challenge, she was playing World of Warcraft hardcore with a controller and as the healer. And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting setup. I could copy a bunch of that and cut out a bunch of design work. Anyway, not gonna rant for too much longer, but I'm gonna continue to make games. It was really fun making Heal to Dev. Thanks for everyone following my journey, and I'll see you guys later.